Consider the man on the day his plan finally works. The contract is signed, the income rises, the door opens, people return his calls. He can travel, purchase, command, and choose without asking permission. Everybody calls this victory. But watch carefully. He may have gained choices faster than he gained restraint, and that means the day of arrival may also be the day of his greatest vulnerability. We assume results certify the person who produced them. They do not. Results may prove intelligence, endurance, talent, strategy, or courage. They prove capacity. Capacity is what a man can accomplish. Character is what governs him when accomplishment gives him options. Write that distinction into your thinking. Income is not self-government. Recognition is not maturity. Access is not discipline. Authority is not integrity. A man may be qualified to lead an organization and still be unprepared to lead himself. Struggle can hide this problem. When money is limited, some desires remain untested because they cannot be financed. When access is restricted, certain impulses appear quiet because opportunity is absent. When a man answers to many people, he may look disciplined because consequences stand close beside him. Limitation can produce the appearance of restraint without producing the substance of restraint. Then success removes the fence. Now the motive has room. The appetite has privacy. The decision has reach. What was once a private weakness can become an expensive habit, a damaged household, a corrupted culture, or a command that affects hundreds of lives. Success did not necessarily manufacture the weakness. It gave the weakness permission, privacy, and power. Do not become dramatic. Become honest. Messages about the dangers of success can attract attention precisely because the contradiction is sharp. But attention is not proof that every successful man is collapsing, and one powerful presentation cannot establish how widespread the crisis is. The principle requires no exaggeration. Expanded freedom simply enlarges both the opportunity to serve and the opportunity to self-destruct. We are going to examine 5 amplifiers. Money gives habits reach. Influence changes what others are willing to challenge. Appetite converts access into temptation. Isolation removes truthful correction. An unmanaged will turns strength into a weapon against every boundary. 5 amplifiers, 1 central crisis. Achievement expands the field in which character must operate. So keep one question before you. Say it slowly. Who governs the man when circumstances stop governing him? When the budget no longer says no, who says no? When subordinates hesitate to correct him, who confronts him? When privacy increases, who watches his conduct? When desire can be satisfied immediately, what makes him wait? When his will can move nearly everything around him, what can move his will? Success is not the end of testing. Success enlarges the testing field. Its safety depends upon something internal, the ability to place expanding freedom under purpose and disciplined character. That ability is self-government. We must define it precisely, because if freedom grows while government remains weak, achievement has not removed danger. It has removed the excuses that kept the danger hidden. Then let us answer the question, what governs a man after external limits recede? Not achievement. Achievement cannot govern what achievement releases. A man cannot manage expanded freedom with vague words, especially when he has confused accomplishment with maturity. Write down 4 words: success, purpose, character, self-government. For this message, these are operational definitions. They are tools for examining conduct, not scientific classifications, statistical conclusions, or claims borrowed from Scripture. We are defining them clearly so the argument can be tested honestly. First, success. Success here means expanded capacity, options, reach, and responsibility. It means a man can do more, choose more, affect more, and therefore answer for more. Notice what is absent from that definition: moral superiority. Success may enlarge a man's platform without enlarging his wisdom. It may increase what he controls without improving how he controls himself. So stop using achievement as evidence of virtue. Achievement tells us that something worked. It does not tell us what now governs the one who made it work. Second, purpose. Purpose is the governing reason to which a man's resources, decisions, and ambitions must remain answerable. Purpose is not excitement. It is not a polished statement for public display. It is not whatever feels important this week. Purpose answers the question, what is this freedom for? If wealth, access, authority, and energy cannot be assigned to a reason greater than appetite, appetite will assign them to itself. Third, character. Character is repeated alignment between declared standards and actual conduct, especially when secrecy or advantage makes violation possible. Reputation is what observers believe about you. Character is what your choices reveal when observers are absent. Do not get quiet now. If a standard survives only while someone is watching, the watcher is governing you. Character begins where supervision ends. Fourth, self-government. Say it carefully. Self-government is placing freedom under chosen standards before pressure, appetite, or opportunity makes the decision urgent. Before, not during the negotiation with desire. Before, not after secrecy has offered protection. Before, not when consequences are already approaching. Self-government does not wait for the decisive moment and hope to become strong. It establishes the boundary while judgment is clear. Now bring the four together. Purpose determines where freedom should go. Character determines what freedom must not be allowed to violate. Self-government keeps freedom answerable to both. That is the principle. Let me put it into a formula. Greater reach plus weaker government produces greater consequences. Greater reach under stronger government produces stewardship. The same expansion can multiply disorder or multiply service. The deciding factor is not merely what entered the man's hands, but what was already governing his hands when it arrived. Look at the four definitions you recorded. Which two have you confused? Success with character, purpose with ambition, reputation with character, emergency resistance with self-government. Name the confusion, because an unnamed confusion becomes an unexamined permission. We now have a common vocabulary for all five amplifiers. The principle will not change when the domain changes. We begin with the most visible increase in options, money. The first test is simple and uncomfortable when resources increase. Does purpose assign them, or does impulse quietly inherit them? Money does not answer the question for you. It does not arrive carrying character. It does not corrupt every hand it enters, and it does not certify every person who possesses it. Those are shortcuts, and shortcuts are dangerous because they excuse examination. One man blames money for conduct he refused to govern. Another points to money as proof that his conduct needs no correction. Both men have assigned moral authority to a resource. Within this argument, money is an amplifier of available choices. It gives a habit more territory. It enables generosity and indulgence, preparation and concealment, service and escape. Money does not choose among them. The governing man chooses or fails to choose, which is itself a choice. Now watch the distinction. Scarcity may prevent an impulse because the payment cannot be made. Stewardship can refuse that same impulse when payment is effortless. Outwardly, both men may leave the purchase untouched. Internally, they are not the same. One was stopped by price. The other was directed by purpose. Remove the price barrier and you discover whether restraint was financial or moral. Consider a clearly hypothetical example. A man receives a promotion. His income creates room to give more, invest more, conceal more, indulge more, or rescue someone from a genuine burden. The promotion has opened several doors at once. Which door is correct? The money cannot tell him. His purpose must determine which options receive permission. His character must reject what violates his standards. And his self-government must enforce that decision when every account says he can afford otherwise. Do not confuse "I can pay for it" with "this belongs in my life." Affordability is a calculation. Permission is a judgment. Here is where financial expansion becomes personal. A useful possession can slowly become an identity assignment. The man no longer owns things merely because they serve a function. He needs them to announce that he has arrived. Then every room becomes an audience, every purchase becomes evidence, and every comparison demands another response. His lifestyle is no longer expanding around his purpose. His identity is expanding around his lifestyle. And maintaining that identity is expensive, not only in currency, but in honesty. He may hide purchases, minimize costs, neglect prior commitments, or call indulgence a reward, because the truthful name would disturb him. Be careful when money begins purchasing relief from self-examination. Ask yourself some financial questions and do not answer them theatrically. What does your spending protect? What does it hide? Which commitments became less important when your income increased? Which private habits are growing faster than your responsibility? When more entered your hands, did your generosity become more deliberate, or did your appetite become more sophisticated? Do your records reveal purpose or merely preference? This is why governance must become procedural. Good intentions are too vague for expanding options. Define your priorities before surplus appears. Establish spending boundaries before emotion begins arguing. Place consequential decisions under transparent review with someone permitted to question you. Create a delay rule for major purchases so excitement cannot impersonate wisdom. Decide what portion of increase serves responsibility, preparation, generosity, and legitimate enjoyment. Then review the pattern, not merely the individual transaction. Say the principle plainly. Self-government makes money a servant of purpose instead of an extension of impulse. The goal is not fear of wealth. Fear cannot steward anything. The goal is mastery of assignment, the capacity to direct resources without allowing resources to redefine the director. Money should increase the reach of responsibility, not merely the reach of desire. But resources are only the first amplifier. Success also changes the room around a man. More people may depend upon his approval. Fewer may risk his displeasure, and correction may become increasingly expensive to deliver. The next danger is not what enters his account. It is what disappears from the voices surrounding him. That disappearance does not usually announce itself. The room may still be crowded, the messages still arrive, the meetings multiply, people laugh, applaud, advise, and report. Yet influence has changed the price of honesty. When someone needs a man's approval, income, access, or favor, disagreement is no longer merely disagreement. It may threaten opportunity. It may delay advancement. It may disturb security. So people begin calculating what truth will cost them. Write this down. Isolation is not always the absence of people. Isolation begins when a man can hear many voices but has arranged his life so none of them can correct him. Do not confuse being surrounded with being known. A full calendar can conceal an unexamined life. A large audience can produce attention without access. Thousands may recognize his public language, while no one is permitted to question his private conduct. He is visible, celebrated, consulted, and still unknown where truth is most needed. Consider a hypothetical leader whose team delivers constant reports. They tell him what increased, what failed, what competitors are doing, and what decision must be made next. His information grows every week. But the team has learned not to question how he treats people, why he conceals certain choices, or whether his judgment is being distorted by pride. They report outcomes while avoiding conduct. Data increases. Truth decreases. Watch what happens next. Every critic is called disloyal. Every objection becomes disrespect. Every difficult question is interpreted as a challenge to authority. Relationships are divided into two categories: useful or threatening. If you affirm him, you understand the vision. If you confront him, you have become the problem. That is not leadership protected from sabotage. That is ego protected from inspection. And here is the contradiction. A man may demand accountability from everyone he leads. He requires reports, deadlines, explanations, measurements, and correction. But who has inspection rights over him? Who can ask a direct question without first protecting his mood? Who can identify a pattern without losing access? Who can say, your results are impressive, but your conduct is becoming dangerous, and still be present the following week? If the answer is no one, the structure is already failing. Purpose reminds influence what authority is for. Character prevents power from rewriting the standards. Self-government preserves truthful correction before disagreement begins to feel like personal offense. A governed man does not merely tolerate honesty when it is convenient. He builds conditions in which honesty can survive his power. That requires a small, credible correction structure. Not an audience, not admirers with honorary access. Choose people who have explicit permission to ask direct questions. Their livelihood and status should not depend entirely upon your rewards. Give them scheduled access, because vague invitations disappear when pressure rises. Establish a response process. Hear the concern without retaliation. Answer it truthfully. Identify what must change and return with evidence of action. Do not say, I have advisors, too quickly. Counsel is not government merely because advice was offered. Counsel becomes part of governance when a man is committed beforehand to hear, answer, and act. Otherwise, advisors become decorations around decisions already made. Ask yourself one question and resist the impressive answer. Who can correct me at a cost I cannot impose upon them? Influence is safest when truth does not require permission from your comfort. But even preserved correction addresses only the voices outside the man. Another force is already speaking within him. When success increases access, desire gains new opportunities to argue. The next test is appetite. What happens when what he wants becomes easier to obtain? The fantasy is simple. When I arrive, I will finally be satisfied. No. Arrival can remove the obstacle without removing the hunger. It can place the desired thing closer, make secrecy easier, and reduce the cost of saying yes. Access does not discipline appetite. It gives appetite more opportunities to request authority. And appetite is larger than many men admit. It is not confined to sex, food, or possessions. Appetite may crave admiration, novelty, control, revenge, comfort, attention, or repeated proof that you still matter. A man may refuse one visible indulgence while feeding endlessly on applause. He may control consumption while demanding control of every room. The object changes. The governing question does not, who decides what this desire is permitted to do? Write this distinction down. Enjoyment receives a boundary from purpose. Appetite keeps renegotiating the boundary after every satisfaction. Governed enjoyment can say, this is good, this is permitted, and this is enough. Ungoverned appetite says, since that caused no immediate damage, more must also be safe. It converts one exception into a precedent, then uses the precedent to demand another exception. The limit moves because desire has become both the applicant and the judge. Consider a hypothetical decision illustration, not evidence of what successful people typically do. A man is traveling. He is away from familiar relationships and routines. He is tired, celebrating a victory, enjoying unusual privacy, and surrounded by easy access to something he has already decided does not belong in his life. No single condition controls him, but together they weaken attention and strengthen appetite's argument. Listen to its vocabulary: deserved, harmless, temporary, private, under control. I deserve this may mean effort has been converted into moral permission. It is harmless may mean no consequence is immediately visible. It is temporary may be an attempt to exempt the moment from the standard. It is private confuses concealment with innocence. It is under control is often declared precisely when control has stopped asking for examination. Those words are not always false, but under pressure they can function as permission rather than evaluation. Appetite does not need to prove an action wise. It only needs to delay honest judgment until access and emotion have joined forces. Therefore, establish government before the journey, the celebration, the fatigue, or the private opportunity. Name the non-negotiable without soft language. Decide the exit plan, where you will go, whom you will contact, what you will leave, and how quickly you will leave it. Practice disclosure with someone who can ask specific questions, not merely receive polished summaries. Limit environments that combine secrecy, access, and weaken judgment. And create recovery routines for exhaustion, because a depleted man often interprets relief as permission. Do not turn this into shame. Disciplined men still experience desire. Character is not proven by pretending appetite has become silent. The test is not whether desire speaks. The test is whether desire receives authority. Say it plainly. The power to satisfy an appetite is not permission to obey it. Purpose identifies what enjoyment may serve. Character keeps the standard intact when satisfaction is available. Self-government enforces the decision already made while desire is demanding revision. But one amplifier remains. Appetite asks for permission. What happens when the will that produced achievement begins resenting the very idea of permission? What happens when determination, celebrated for breaking obstacles, starts treating every boundary as an enemy? Desire may make the request, but will sign the authorization. That is why determination deserves careful examination. The same drive that endured rejection, solved problems, outworked resistance, and carried responsibility through difficulty may have contributed genuinely to achievement. Honor that strength, but do not assume that every expression of strength remains healthy simply because strength produced results before. Determination is constructive while it serves purpose. It becomes destructive when it decides that every resistance is illegitimate. Watch the reversal. Yesterday, the obstacle was delay, incompetence, fear, or confusion. Today, the obstacle may be a spouse asking for presence, a colleague raising a concern, a conscience refusing convenience, a body demanding rest, or a trusted voice offering correction. The will trained to push through begins pushing through people. It calls interruption weakness. It calls disagreement betrayal. It calls exhaustion commitment. It calls apology surrender. Strength has stopped serving purpose and started protecting preference. Write this distinction down. Leadership directs responsibility toward purpose. Control demands that people and conditions protect the leader's preference. Leadership can adjust because the destination matters more than the leader's ego. Control cannot adjust because adjustment feels like loss of dominance. A leader asks, "What does the responsibility require?" A controlling man asks, "Why is anything resisting me?" Consider a hypothetical founder. He can begin when others hesitate. He can accelerate when others become cautious. He can command attention, resources, and action. These capacities help build the work, but he cannot stop a failing initiative, apologize after injuring someone, delegate a decision, or accept a boundary he did not create. Publicly, he appears forceful. Internally, he is governed by momentum. He can move an organization, but he cannot move himself away from pride. That is not mastery. Strength becomes tyranny when a man can impose his will everywhere except upon himself. How do you test whether a powerful will is governed? 4 capacities. Can you pause? Not collapse. Pause. Can you interrupt momentum long enough to examine motive, consequence, and counsel? Can you hear no? Can another person deny your preference without becoming your enemy? Can you change course? Can evidence correct your direction after your identity has become attached to the decision? Can you repair harm? Can you name what you did, accept responsibility, restore what can be restored, and change the pattern without turning accountability into your humiliation story? A governed will can do all 4. Pause. Hear no. Change course. Repair harm. Say them again, because the man who can only advance is not fully free. Now make governance procedural. Establish stop rules for consequential decisions, conditions that require delay, review, or cancellation, regardless of enthusiasm. Protect recovery, because relentless fatigue makes force feel efficient. Delegate real authority, not merely tasks that remain subject to instant reversal. Write thresholds for escalation so urgency cannot be invented to bypass counsel. Practice an apology with no defense hidden inside it. Name the action, name the harm, accept the consequence, state the repair, and provide evidence that the pattern is changing. Restitution is not weakness. It is will brought back under character. Now see the entire chain. Money expands options. Influence reduces resistance. Isolation weakens correction. Appetite supplies demands. Unmanaged will authorizes them. Each amplifier strengthens the next until a man possesses increasing power and decreasing authority over himself. Purpose must therefore command determination. Character must limit what determination is permitted to violate. Self-government must make the strong man stop, listen, turn, and repair. All 5 amplifiers are now visible. The question is no longer whether the warning sounds reasonable. The question is where it has become measurable in your conduct. We must examine the gates one by one: resources, power, correction, desire, and will, and locate the precise place where success is outrunning character. Now lower your voice. This audit is not a performance, and the room does not need your impressive answer. Accuracy is more valuable than appearance. A warning becomes wisdom only when you can point to the conduct it is warning you about. Take the first gate, money. Identify one pattern, not your entire financial life. What spending habit, concealed obligation, or lifestyle expectation is growing faster than your declared purpose? Name the transaction category, name the frequency, name what it is displacing. I should manage money better is fog. This recurring choice is consuming resources already assigned elsewhere, can be governed. Second, influence. Name one person who can disagree with you without paying for it through distance, lost opportunity, retaliation, or a change in your affection. Then name one consequential area that person is actually permitted to question. Your treatment of people, your use of resources, your private decisions. General permission is usually imaginary permission. Truth needs a subject, access, and protection. Third, appetite. Which desire becomes most persuasive when you are celebrating, hiding, resentful, or exhausted? Do not merely name the object. Name the condition that strengthens its argument. Perhaps the danger is not constant desire, but predictable vulnerability. If you know when the negotiation begins, you can establish the boundary before your judgment becomes its attorney. Fourth, isolation. Measure the disclosure gap. How much time passes between questionable conduct and truthful disclosure? Minutes, days, months, never. The longer the interval, the more opportunity you give concealment to edit the story. A widening gap signals that correctability is weakening, even if public reputation remains intact. Fifth, will. Find recent evidence. When did you last interrupt your own momentum? When did you accept a refusal without punishment? Revise a decision because the facts required it? Or make repair after causing harm? Give the date. Name the person. Describe the change. If no example comes readily, do not manufacture one. The absence is itself useful information. It tells you where practice must begin. Now look at the 5 findings. Do not make 5 emotional promises. Choose one primary breach, the place where consequence is greatest, recurrence is clearest, or concealment is strongest. 1 breach. Specificity is not small thinking. It is the beginning of government. Write 4 things beside it. The behavior that must change. The visible action that will demonstrate change. The person who will witness the process, and the deadline by which proof must exist, not intention proof. If the breach concerns money, the evidence may be a reviewed decision. If correction, a protected conversation. If appetite, a documented boundary. If isolation, prompt disclosure. If will, a changed course or completed repair. Understand the limits of this exercise. This is a reflective framework, not a validated psychological instrument, and it does not replace professional support where addiction, danger, coercion, or serious harm is present. Honest self-examination includes knowing when private resolve is insufficient. You now have more than conviction. You have a location, an action, a witness, and a time. Carry those 4 forward. The final question is whether you will place them into a short covenant and let 7 days of visible conduct answer who governs you. Now take the 4 elements from your audit and make them binding. Insight protects nothing while it remains an idea. Agreement is not government. Concern is not government. A boundary that operates when pressure arrives, that is government. Say the principle in its final form. My expanded freedom will remain answerable to purpose, disciplined character, and truthful correction. Say it again, slowly. Freedom is not being removed. It is being directed. Achievement is not being condemned. It is being assigned. Carry 5 laws with you. Assign money before impulse assigns it. Limit influence before power makes honesty expensive. Govern appetite before access turns desire into action. Interrupt isolation before concealment becomes your normal method. Place the will under standards before determination declares every boundary an enemy. 5 laws. 1 governing principle. These laws do not promise an untouched life. They identify 2 possible directions. Achievement left without government may increase exposure to consequences that clearer boundaries could have prevented. More resources can fund disorder. More influence can silence correction. More access can accelerate appetite. More privacy can shelter concealment. More determination can enforce the wrong decision. But achievement placed under government can preserve responsibility, relationships, and usefulness. It can give purpose greater reach without giving appetite greater authority. The difference is not the size of the success. The difference is whether the man carrying it remains governable. So here is your assignment. Within the next 7 days, write a short covenant. Begin with the primary breach you selected. State it without excuse, decoration, or blame. Then write the standard that must govern that breach. What does purpose require? What conduct does character permit? What truth must correction be allowed to expose? Next, install one practical boundary. 1. If you need 6 promises to feel serious, you may be avoiding the one action that would make you accountable. Your boundary might revise a limit, schedule a difficult conversation, remove access, delegate authority, disclose concealed conduct, or complete a repair. Choose what fits the issue. Then give the covenant to the witness you already named. Do not merely announce that you are changing. Give that person permission to examine the evidence. Evidence matters. What will exist that does not exist now? A changed record, a completed conversation, a removed opportunity, a decision transferred, a truthful disclosure, a repaired obligation. Select proof that can be seen, dated, and discussed. Feeling determined is not proof. Feeling ashamed is not proof. Even feeling relieved is not proof. The question is whether the boundary governed conduct when conditions became real. Schedule the review now. Name the day. Name the time. At that review, ask 3 questions. Did the boundary operate? Where did pressure expose weakness? What adjustment must be made for the next 7 days? If it failed, do not hide the failure beneath new language. Correct the structure, strengthen the witness, and narrow the opportunity for evasion. The mature man does not require success to certify his worth. He requires success to serve his purpose. The goal is not to retreat from greater responsibility, but to become the kind of man whose character can safely carry more. Write the covenant, share it, produce the proof, keep the review date. Let your success answer to purpose.